we're ready to go. I'm going to get us started. Today, we're talking about sports wagering and platform technology that's long existed in Europe, and have a discussion about why, with the expansion of betting in the United States, we seem to be reinventing the wheel, something our industry tends to do quite a bit. And pose, among other questions, to our esteemed colleagues, shouldn't we be using some of the time-tested European systems that would enable licensing, regulatory KYC, and responsibility requirements? And then if that's not a plausible way of approaching it, so what is it that's missing? Joined today by two extraordinary and frankly legendary people in the sports betting, legalized sports betting world. Vic is, the truth is, I don't know that sports betting in Nevada would have even fully realized its potential but for Vic. He's founded several important companies, including American Wagering, which became the first listed betting company in the nation. He's currently chairman of US Wagering, but more than anything, he is known as an innovator and a fierce advocate for legal sports betting. And for this, he was elected to the American Gaming Association's Hall of Fame just a few years ago. Also joining us, my friend John English. John specializes in global business development for the regulated gaming industry, with an emphasis on technology, content, and distribution, as well as PR and contract negotiation, some government affairs, really a man of many talents. He's very proudly been involved in many successful creations for the industry. He founded one of the world's largest enterprises that was later acquired by Las Vegas Gaming, Inc. And he was an equity partner in American Wagering, which operated the largest number of sports books in the US. Currently, chairman of, is it WEBE or WEBE?
It's WEBE.
WEBE.
Means all of us. Means all of us, Alan.
Absolutely. I thought that's what it would be, just sort of knowing you. I think that's what it was. So welcome to both of you. We very much appreciate your being here. I wanted to start with, I was doing some research, Vic, and I ran across an article, an interview you had given, I think it was to Roger Gross. This was in the days, months, weeks prior to PASPA being overturned. And you were asked what you thought might happen, and I'll be damned if it isn't exactly what has happened. And that idea basically that there was going to be a free-for-all. The jurisdictions were going to, each want to create their own path, their own map. And for a variety of reasons that are political, probably would want to ignore the state next to them rather than actually doing this together. Has this gone about the way you expected, or is it worse than you expected, or maybe even better than you expected?
Well, Alan is more crazy than I expected, I'll tell you that. But as far as the way it's gone, I didn't expect that sports betting would be the entry point for iGaming. And when this started, when the European companies came over, they are using they're using sports betting to get into iGaming, which is, as I think everybody knows, is really playing slot machines over the internet or blackjack or any of the casino games. I really didn't expect that. The other thing I expected was that the properties here in Las Vegas that have been booking for many years would just expand to the new jurisdictions. That has happened, but it was late to happen. And New Jersey, being the first state, really accepted a lot of European companies. And I thought it would be more controlled by Americans than it's being controlled by the Europeans. So that's the difference. I never expected that. And then the other thing I expected was them new people to follow the rules. We've been booking here in Nevada for over 50 years. Myself been here for 45 years. And we developed systems too that were made for the American market. The European systems are really based on the European model. So that surprised me also.
Can you go a little further on that, the European model as opposed to the US model? What differentiates these two?
Well, the Europeans are really based on soccer, their type of football. And with soccer, I mean, it's, as everybody knows, very low scoring games. So they had to find ways to engage people. And they did it by the number of corner kicks or number of assists, etc. Here, we really have 4 major sports that we book, and 2 of them are really based on point spreads, which the Europeans weren't. So when their systems came over, they all said they were Americanized. They really weren't. Some of them still aren't. They're getting closer, but I took a little bit of offense as far as the description of this panel, because I really thought that they had to come more to us than us to them. And I think it is coming to be that. So they're learning how to so-called Americanize the way that they're taking bets. They use, they have much bigger margins, meaning the juice that they charge our customers are much more than we do. We're basically on a 11 to 10, which is about a 4.54 hold percentage. They come in where they're making lines that are 30 cents, 40 cents, which we never heard of, which is really to the disadvantage of the players. So, and there are things that they introduced that we never did was what's called single game parlays, where you can bet like the Dodgers or the Angels and how many home runs Trout will hit. We called those associated parlays, and that were very likely to happen. So that was new to the market. And I think when the customer figures out how much of a disadvantage they have in that type of parlay, it'll change to more towards our way of booking.
John, before I ask you a first question, let me just say to everyone who's watching, if you have any questions, please do put them. We were to put them in the Q&A. Yeah,
that's correct.
In the Q&A. So if you do have any questions, I will promise to do my very best to keep an eye on it. And though, just so you know, those questions are only visible to us. So it's not like you're asking and being identified among the entire group. John, tell me, I mean, one of your areas of great strength is technology, and the technology that underpins legal gambling and that ultimately ensures its integrity. What does well, let me start more basically. Are the technological requirements similar state to state or close state to state? And beyond that, what's the difference between those requirements from Europe as opposed to a US perspective?
Yeah, sure, Alan. Well, we'll start with the latter first. From the European side, obviously we deal with a much bigger issue here in the United States, which is we have the Wire Act and the UAGA, Unlawful Internet Gaming Enforcement Act. So, I mean, we have a lot of different regulations and rules that we have to follow here in the US, which also, makes it more necessary for technology. When we first started looking at the European platforms, obviously geolocation was one of the things that was a big necessity that we have. We cannot place bets across state lines here. So that was a big issue when first looking at a lot of the European platforms. They don't have to deal with the same things and the same regulations that we have. Additionally, they were displayed differently. They display their odds in decimal format and whatever. So the European platforms were a whole different thing when they first arrived here. They've since evolved. They've gotten better. Things have changed. They have more themselves towards our market. So, they've narrowed down the sports that need to be played and what have you. From a technology side, I look at all the various technologies, Alan. I try to figure out what's best for our industry moving forward. In the early days, Vic's company was the very first to come out with computerized wagering on the very first old IBM computers. And that sparked a technology revolution that just hadn't happened in sports betting. Up until then, it was chalkboards or whiteboards were the technology, and then big technology was when they started using magnetic chalkboards and magnetic whiteboards and things along those lines, where you can post the names without having to write them down. Then came the computerized systems that really changed things. Then obviously the kiosk was the next evolution, where self-service terminals and people were able to place bets on their own. And then the very big game changer for us technology-wise was utilizing smartphones. And smartphones, when we started, was with BlackBerry. And that was, we started in 2008. We launched in 2010, and from here to there in the U.S. now, it accounts for about 65, maybe even 70% of bets in some areas. So it's technology's been a big advancement. Looking forward, I'm looking at all types of various advancements. I'm looking at artificial intelligence. I mean, it's a whole new world out there now, and it can't be ignored. And rather than disparage it or fight it and push it away, I've befriended artificial intelligence and found ways to make it work for our industry and ways to make it work for our business from every aspect. From aspects as far as helping efficiencies in the back office, helping create a more user-friendly interface for our players by giving them what they normally want, or being able to predict what they would normally be looking for. There's a lot of advantages to looking at the newer technologies that are out there today. From a security and transparency aspect, there's blockchains to develop on today. Some people like to develop on it, some people are anti-blockchain, but nonetheless, it does offer transparency. So there's a lot of different technologies that we're looking at to help better both what we're doing in the industry globally, but more importantly, what we can do here in the United States to make it a better and faster moving regulatory process here in the US. You got to keep in mind the US is still in its infant stages. That's why everybody's still rushing here. California is the golden goose, Texas, you've got Oklahoma, you've got lots of big areas, and Florida is just now being discovered. So there's a lot of growth still here in the United States. And I'm looking forward to technology and some of the newer things that we're doing to help capture some of that audience and make things more convenient for the customer.
I have to sort of validate this AI notion. And I can tell you that I approached it with incredible skepticism. My area of expertise is in responsible gambling. And, there were discussions long ago, well, maybe AI could be helpful in identifying people who may be struggling. And I dismissed it outright 3 years ago, because AI can't tell you what mental state you're in. Here we are 2 or 3 years later, and we actually think that it isn't about identifying a diagnosis, but that it can distinguish, or may be able to distinguish, between a player who is playing in a healthy way and in a positive way, and someone you want to market to, versus a player who's experiencing stress and problems. And frankly, those are people you probably want to stay away from. So I have great hopes for AI. I didn't have them just a few short years ago, but I've changed my mind. I agree with you completely. Trying to, sort of hold it back is like trying to prevent a wave to hit the sand.
Yeah, you need to befriend it. It's not like we're doing away with humans. I mean, obviously humans play a very large role in sports betting, from the back office and oversight, and, artificial intelligence isn't at the point where it could predict injuries or predict things that can happen during an event. So, it's still a very big need for human interaction, but we are almost at the point of singularity where artificial intelligence is learning while we're speaking right now. It's learning how to do things better, how to process things better. So it's a constant evolution, and I think that where we're headed, it's only going to make it more convenient for the customer. It's going to make it easier to operate on the backside of things. It's going to generate reports easier state by state. You had asked me state by state, what do we see that's different? Well, each state does have different regulations and rules. Nevada being one that's a very tough state when it comes to some of the new technologies that are out there. It takes a while for Nevada to get things out there. It takes a while for a lot of the states and countries to be able to move forward with technology. That's why really looking forward to this new movement where we see technology starting to make strides and people embrace it rather than oppose it.
I want to ask both
But
of you. Oh, go ahead, Vic.
well, remember that artificial intelligence is really created by human beings have to be behind. The artificial intelligence really is algorithms that are put together. Where the humans come in is how much, let's take, for example, a football game. But I mean, there's so many different factors that go into making a line or deciding who's going to win. Injuries, weather, artificial or natural turf, etc. And it's really how you weight each one of those where you come up with a line. I've been a big supporter of artificial intelligence. For years, I knew it was coming, but somebody still has to make that first line, and that's where the human element still comes in. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, very true. I have a question for both of you. Vic, I'd like to start with you. Is a fully integrated and comprehensive regulatory scheme even a possibility in the US, considering the disparate jurisdictions? So there's the US, and then there's the notion of actually having something worldwide. Is that an objective that's at all realistic?
Well, yes, I've always thought that way. The problems we run into is really the taxation. Because like if you take Nevada, we're taxed at 6.75 is the maximum tax we pay here. In New York, they want 51% of the tax. So if you just put those two states together, how do you equalize the taxes that are paid? And the other thing is, I know from my experience, most of the states and the operators really don't want the federal government involved in our business. And this opens us to federal regulation and more costs. What's happening? I mean, since when we were writing tickets by hand, sure, we one ticket writer, if you wrote 100 tickets a day, that was really a good writer. I mean, now they write 500 bets a day. So, I just, it's very difficult. How are we going to make all these things come together? Oh, the other thing out there, which I think, and John and I have been proponents of, is working with the Native Americans. Now they're their own country, so to speak, and to get them together, they could become the biggest sports books in in the business. So we have a lot, there's a lot that goes into this national bookmaking or worldwide bookmaking for that. But we have to consider that as long as it's happening. Now, if there are competition is the Caribbean sports books, the British sports books, and how do we fight them? Because most of them extend credit. Credit hasn't been extended for bookmaking here in the United States, legal bookmaking. And we're working on a solution for that now. So that's going to be the future of being able to compete with offshore bookmakers.
John, your thoughts about whether or not a consistent regulatory scheme is possible?
Yeah, Alan, theoretically, it is possible, right? I mean, it can be done. This is something that, Peter and Mark at IGSA have been very large proponents of making a one system type of environment where you fill out your forms one time. I mean, let's think about the process of filing for an application in a gaming jurisdiction. It's a big deal. I mean, you're filling out, dozens of pages of forms, if not hundreds of pages of forms, and supplying lots and lots of information. You have to plus, you have to do that for each and every state. It would be nice to have one registry where you could be able to get at least all the information, the background information, the enforcement information, all the internal controls, the responsible gaming aspects of all of that into one catalog, and then be able to offer that to each and every state for approval. As Vic mentioned, there's going to be nuances. There's going to be the state taxes are going to be different. Some states are going to allow for different things than other states. Tennessee, for instance, is mobile only. There's no brick and mortar. If you look at the tribes, a lot of the tribes want to do brick and mortar and not so much mobile, at least at this point. So, there's going to be different nuances, but theoretically it can be done. It can be done, rather easily nowadays with being able to group all the various categories of what it is that you need, your financial aspects, and you have that all in order. So you put that into one file. You have your background information, so you have that in a different file, and then you have all the other information, your internal controls and all that stuff, so that it can be supplied state by state by state. I think that could help speed up the regulatory process, help make it a one system type of approval. But as we've always wanted, and we're still quite a ways away, it would be nice to see one federal system across the board. But I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. So we're going to be working with this quilt work, state by state, tribe by tribe. Each tribe is different too. So they have been open and easy to work with, and they are going to be very large, as Nick mentioned. So a large amount of focus has been poured into how do we move through that process easily as well. So I do think it's feasible. I think theoretically it can be done. It's just a matter of whether each state will accept it.
Curious of both of you as to what obstacles this lack of consistency creates, which is maybe a negative way of asking, what are the benefits of consistency? But I think in order to understand the benefits, we need to understand what some of the challenges are that have been created. I would imagine that one of those would be, as technology advances, and it is advancing at an unbelievable pace, how do you introduce new technology in each jurisdiction? Is there a separate process that you have to go through in each jurisdiction? And I would assume, therefore, time and money is a big challenge.
Yeah, it is a big challenge, and picking the right jurisdictions that are not only friendly to technology but have a forward-looking Oh, look, I would say to technology and what it can do for them. I would say that moving forward, that one of the biggest challenges that we have is that if you and I come up with a great idea right now, Alan, and we think it's going to change the world, we're not going to see it for 4 or 5 years in a typical regulatory environment. You have to go through a lot of paces, you have to go through lab requirements, you have to go through independent testing in some areas, and then you have to find the believers, and then you have to test it out, so on and so forth. So it takes a while for technology to move in the gaming sector. It would be nice to see it move faster, but at this pace, it's a little frustrating at times when you come up with something great and you think it's going to make a big difference for the industry. I mean, to see it stifled. We've when we going back, we were fortunate when we developed mobile wagering here in the U.S. We were fortunate that we had champions at the Gaming Control Board that really were there to help us along and really wanted to see us succeed. There was a lot of parts and there was a lot of pieces that were involved in it, but even with that, it still took 3 years to get it from point A to launching. So I'd say timing is probably the biggest thing. We're a little bit behind technology wise as an industry.
Vic, what obstacles do you see coming from the lack of consistency?
Well, really, it is the gaming control boards that are very inconsistent. This is a known fact. It's easier to get a new product through New Jersey than it is Nevada. And now in Nevada, you go through an independent labs, and after you go through the independent labs, then you still have to go through gaming again. And the process, I can't tell you, is very, very expensive and time consuming. And you have to go, when you understand how regulators are made up of, you have an audit division, an enforcement division, technical division, and each one of those, there's probably 5 of them now, in each jurisdiction has to sign off on it. So that's the biggest obstacle. And the regulators don't want to make a mistake. They don't want a black eye if, yeah, you got the newest, greatest product, and then somebody finds a way to cheat it, and then the state gets a black eye. So they're very, very, very concerned about it, and they want to try it and test it again. So that's the biggest obstacle, in my opinion.
We have a question that's come in from one of our participants. Is there an opportunity to work with organizations such as NAGRA and IGSA to help educate and speed up technology adoption? Or is that a pipe dream?
Well, I could say a little bit about that. I think the opportunity is massive, and I think that everybody should get involved from a industry standpoint, because the more support groups like IGSA get, the stronger it becomes, the better it'll be able to push things forward for our industry. I think that a lot of great things are happening at IGSA with regard to trying to simplify the process in general. I hope it's not a pipe dream. It's something that we'd really like to see happen. I know that the leadership of IGSA has really put forward a lot of effort and to try and package everything so that it's easier for everybody to swallow. And that's every part, Alan, including yours, which is responsible gaming. That's something that is bounced around from state to state, is they're making their considerations as to whether or not to have sports betting. So I do think that the organizations in the industry are a big benefit. I do wish that they would get more support from the members of the industry, and everybody be very active in pushing things forward. I think it'll help our states. as we move forward. Vic mentioned New Jersey's been very forward thinking and being able to allow things to move forward while they do their investigations. And, you know, it seems to be that Nevada should also follow that type of, I know that we don't want any black eyes, as Vic mentioned, and that we're very cautious and we're very careful, and that's much appreciated. But we also got to take a look at, as you mentioned earlier, things are changing. The world is moving very fast. How are we going to keep up with that from a regulatory perspective? And I think that the state and the regulators need to take a look inside and say, this is how we're going to do it.
Well, the other thing, as far as associations go, John, is that you got to remember the NC2A, for example, in college football, or the NFL. They're having associations with bookmakers. Personally, I think that's a real bad idea, and it does nothing but bring up problems, and customers are going to be very confused when they bet on their home team who is partners with a bookmaker and somebody wins a bet. So we need more agreement on that. And the other thing that always gets me upset, which we went through here in Nevada, is accepting wagers on your home, especially in college sports, on your home teams or in state. And some states allow it and others don't. Now, if you don't allow it, take, for example, in Michigan, they won't let you bet on Michigan State. In Michigan, well, who out there really doesn't believe that there's still going to be a ton of wagers on when they play each other? So where are they going to go? They're going to go to the illegal bookmakers. Now, if something's funny about that game or questionable, the illegal bookmakers aren't going to go to regulators and say, hey, we saw this unusual action on Michigan. So they really need to book their own teams in their own states so that they find out when stuff is happening. So those associations, plus the advertising associations with teams, are bad also. So as far as associations go, Alan, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. And obviously have also been here in the US a great controversy where colleges have decided to sign on to sponsorships, and those are being unraveled as quickly as they can.
Yeah.
What do sorry?
I don't think that's a good idea, colleges being associated with bookmakers. I mean, it should be church and state as far as college sports and bookmakers.
What do either of you see as the greatest threat to the continued sustainability of sports betting? Vic, why don't we start with you? What would you identify as the greatest threat?
Greatest threat. I think the greatest threat is jurisdictions really start out taxing us and putting us out of business where it's not really profitable. I mean, when you start off with sports wagering, it's like a grocery store. Our margins aren't that big. On straight bets are around 4%. They're probably around 10% on parlays. But if you have somebody that's taking huge like New York, I don't see how that's sustainable when you're giving 51% away, and you still have to pay for staff, etc., systems. I think that's the biggest threat. There's so many hands in the pot now. When I stood now, and for us old guys, we were around there. It was just the bookmaker. We didn't pay anybody else. We just paid what we made. Now you got organizations like you guys, which are good. They want to cut. The leagues want to cut. TV wants a cut. Geolocation wants a cut, etc. And I mean, it's going to, I don't want to see it go the way horse racing has gone. And horse racing has gone. I mean, when I was a kid, a $2 bet was a thing. It's still a $2 bet. It didn't go up with inflation, or it would be a $20 minimum bet. So it's the cost of running this industry that's the biggest threat.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that, with what Vic said, Alan. It's there's a lot of hands out, and everybody's wants a piece of this and a piece of that, and it is a very low margin business. So that is something to really take into consideration when people take a view as sports betting. They see the big, the all the commercials, they see DraftKings, they see FanDuel, they see BetMGM, they see all the big money that's being spent, and they think, wow, it's a huge industry. It's really a low margin industry. And that is something that needs to be taken into account. We really need to watch where the spending happens and how much is spent, because there just isn't a lot there. The other threat that I see that's happening too, and it's an old threat. It's something that it's not something new. It's been there. It's always been there, and it's going to be there for a long time. Is the illegal bookmaker. Does not pay those taxes, does not have to pay a lot of the things that we pay. In fact, they'll scrape for the feeds, and they won't pay for the feeds. They don't pay taxes. They have a lot of they issue credit. They have a lot of different advantages that we don't have still to this day. So hopefully we'll get more progressive in our industry. As Vic mentioned, we're working on products and projects to be able to offer credit as well. We're looking at advantages to take, to be able to take advantage of some of the things that they're doing offshore, to be able to make things better here in the US and other places. But they have a lot more freedoms than we have. They don't face the regulatory issues. They don't face the tax issues. They just don't have the expenses that we have. And because they're hitting the entire United States, they have the volume. So it's there's still a large threat out there to us, and I wouldn't say it's so much something that's new. It's something that we should be aware of, that we could even, and look at, since PASPA, since 2018, the United States has grown consistently year on year in handle. So it does show that it has worked by opening up the United States for sports betting, but it has not put the illegal bookmaker out of business.
In fact, John, the illegal bookmakers that I have talked to say their business is increasing also, because we're educating more people how to bet and everything, and then they want credit, and they go offshore for that credit. And with all the there's a lot of problems with offshore, as we all know.
Well, we were once told that mobile wagering was going to hurt land-based gaming, but it's done nothing but be a benefit. So,
and we were told that the riverboats in Iowa are going to devastate Las Vegas, and that Macau is going to destroy Las Vegas. Everything is going to destroy someone, and it turns out it's not exactly.
Everything is growing.
I mean, I remember, and it just keeps growing, and it's especially Las Vegas is really benefited by this. And these, it's like it's like being in the World Series of Poker, and you'd go through all the satellite splits. Excuse me, still the king is to become and be at that final table. And the same thing, I think, with all these people that play sports across the country, when they come here to Las Vegas, it's like hitting that final table. And they're not afraid to go up to a ticket writer. They're not really, it really is a daunting thing for people to walk into a sports book, like Hilton, or now like a Circa. It's overwhelming. What are all these numbers? What are all these lights? And it really has changed now that people will come up. Women are growing as bettors now. So It's really, it's been great.
We're pushing up against time, and I know we started late, so I'm still going to ask this last question, even though it's going to push us a little bit over 10 o'clock. And again, to both of you, if you were given an opportunity to pass a rule or a law, what would be the first thing that you do? What would you identify as the number one priority in dealing either with regulatory or legal change?
Are we talking about state by state? Because if it's Nevada, the first thing I would change is remote registration.
Okay.
That would be the absolute very first thing I would.
I guess we'd have to ultimately create a matrix, wouldn't we, of each jurisdiction?
Yeah,
and
because
what
if
it
you look
would
at
be.
other states, you can sign up for an account with a credit card. There's challenges with opening an account here, and that's one of the things I would work to change right away. How about you, Vic?
Interstate wagering, and to try to figure out how you compensate different parties. But interstate would be great. You know, it's like, I guess alcohol is still kind of limited, but more so that anybody can buy alcohol in any state. So why can't we bet in any state? So I would say interstate wagering.
It feels as if all of the online activity gets really close to tripping the federal wire. And I'm not talking about the Wire Act. I'm talking about that, that fishing line that's going to set off an explosion. And the industry has always put up a wall when it comes to federal engagement. But aren't there some benefits to that if it were to happen?
I believe so. I believe to both. You know, we're in what we call a war. It's always the bookmaker against the customer. And I mean, for example, if you have the 49ers in the Super Bowl against Baltimore, and Baltimore, they're going to get all the action and be overbet. And in San Francisco, the opposite. Now, if we can have it so it's nationwide, that will level it out. It would be good for the bookmaker. We get more business, and the players would get more opportunities. So that's how I feel.
Okay. John, I have to imagine there are some benefits to common federal law certainly about KYC, technology standards, et cetera.
Certainly, it would simplify everything, right? I mean, I think it would be fabulous if we could get there, right? I mean, it's something I hope to see in my life, but we've been working a long time, and the benefits are certainly there. As we move forward, to have KYC requirements, reporting requirements, FinCEN, all this stuff like that as one straight. The federal stuff is in a box, and that's pretty easy because it is in that box. Federal requirements are the federal requirements. We have to fill them out. But then you go state by state, and then you have different laws for each and every other thing. Makes it a little more complex and difficult. So going, Alan, because I know we're short on time. Going to the original question about the European platforms coming and reinventing the wheel. Look, anybody can do this, whether you're from Europe or whether South America. I mean, there's some great developers out there. The platforms of today just need to keep in mind that the regulations state by state are different. They need to be scalable. They need to have cyber resiliency, which is something that's really important nowadays. I mean, William Hill was down on Super Bowl Sunday. You've really got to pay attention. I mean, to what's happening. There's a lot of cyber risk that's out there right now. We need to have easy feed and third-party integrations. We need to have risk and reporting centralized and made easier so they can be used across multiple states. We need all the great reporting features that you need state by state. And of course, a seamless, minimal touch for the consumer. You want them to have a great experience. And we also want to add convenience to that experience as we move forward. So, some of that's going to come from Europe, some of it's going to come from South America, some of it's going to come from good old American ingenuity. But, I think it's all good and it's great. We just have very limited choices for platforms right here in the US right now.
Well, gentlemen, I thank you very much. I know we've run a little over time, so if that's inconvenienced anyone, our apologies. But thank you both so much. And Peter, we'll turn it back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.